During our cousin's wedding in Savannah, my sister-in-law locked my 8-year-old daughter in a storage room so her own daughter could walk down the aisle alone. I found Natalia 40 minutes into the ceremony, clutching her flower basket in the dark. My sister-in-law hadn't just locked the door. She had wedged a chair under the handle. That was the moment I realized I had spent 5 years protecting a predator. My name is Rachel, and this is the story of the day I stopped protecting Brenda and what that protection had been costing my daughter the entire time. Natalia didn't just practice for the flower girl walk. She obsessed. She researched delphinium petals specifically for their scatter rate, informed me of her findings at breakfast, and dismissed rose petals with the authority of someone who has done the reading. She tied her own ribbon on the white wicker basket, rejected my first suggestion, rejected my second, got the third one right on her own terms, and placed it on the highest shelf of her closet 4 months before the wedding. She made a practice schedule. She walked the hallway with orchestral music from her tablet, both hands on the handle, eyes forward, one slow step at a time. She wasn't performing, she was committing. And that commitment was exactly what Brenda used against her. My sister-in-law Brenda is the kind of woman who produces results. She organized Tony's parents' 40th anniversary from a spreadsheet with 17 columns. She remembered every dietary restriction, every arrival time, every seating preference. I admired this for a long time. What I have had to rearrange in my understanding is the difference between a person who is organized and a person who uses organization as a mechanism of control. I told myself for years that Brenda was simply someone who cared about things being done right. I told myself her tendency to quietly adjust plans in ways that centered her daughter Mabel was just the natural partiality of a devoted mother, the same partiality any of us have. I told myself the way she sometimes looked at Natalia, a specific, appraising look, the look of someone measuring a distance, was just the way some people look at children who aren't theirs. I told myself a lot of things that required me not to look too directly at the pattern forming in front of me. Tony's cousin Carolyn had asked both girls to be flower girls at her wedding in Savannah in June. Both. She said it to both families together, over dinner at his parents' house, and Natalia and Mabel squealed the way 8- and 9-year-olds squeal when something genuinely wonderful happens to them. They squealed the same amount. I thought it meant something. The venue was a historic property on Bull Street, the kind of Savannah wedding space that has been photographing people's happiest days since the 1890s. At the tour, the events coordinator Patricia Tomlinson mentioned, as part of a prepared speech, that the property had full camera coverage in every public corridor, inside and out, used for both security and the wedding videography package. I remember thinking it was a nice security feature. I didn't realize it was actually a crime scene recorder. Brenda was put in charge of coordinating the flower girl logistics. Carolyn trusted her. Tony trusted her. I let her be trusted because the alternative required evidence I didn't have yet. The evidence was already being recorded. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock. By 3:30, both flower girls were supposed to be in the staging area at the back of the venue. Tony and I were already seated because Brenda had said she had it handled. At 3:55, the music shifted to the piece the girls were supposed to walk to. The rear doors opened. Mabel came through in her ivory dress, basket swinging, petals falling in uneven handfuls. She walked the full aisle. She reached the front and took her place. The doors stayed open. I waited for Natalia. The next piece of music started. The bridesmaids began to move. I turned to Tony. His face was already doing the calculation I was doing. I stood up. I walked out the side door into the corridor lined with framed photographs of couples who had stood in this building for 100 years. The service corridor was at the far end. The door was closed. There was a chair wedged under the handle, not jammed, wedged, deliberately placed. The kind of deliberate that takes a moment of standing and thinking and deciding. I moved the chair and opened the door. Natalia was standing in the center of the room, 4 feet from the door, the white basket in both hands. The pale yellow ribbon she had tied herself was still perfect. The petals were still inside. She had not scattered a single one. Her face when she saw me was the face of a child who had decided, at some point in the 40 minutes she had been in there, to be okay, and was holding that decision very carefully because she understood that if she stopped holding it, something might break. "Mommy," she said. The door wouldn't open. I pulled her into the corridor and held her in the particular way you hold a child when you know exactly what you want to do to the person who put them there, and you need your body to be doing something different from your mind. Then she said, against my shoulder, in the calm voice of a child repeating an explanation she had been given word by a grown adult who then closed a door on her. She said 2 flower girls would make the dresses clash. I held her. I said nothing yet. What I understood, standing in that corridor, was that this was not a scheduling error, not a miscommunication, not a moment of thoughtlessness. It had been decided in advance. If you think a locked door is an isolated incident, you don't know Brenda. To understand the storage room, you have to see the paper trail of the last 5 years. It started with a golden egg. The first incident I filed away as something I didn't understand yet. Easter 14 months before the wedding, at Tony's parents' house in Athens. His mother organizes an egg hunt in the backyard every year. Real eggs, 30-odd of them, and 1 golden egg carrying the prize. A small envelope with money and a gift. Brenda had volunteered to help set up while the adults were having coffee inside. When the hunt started, Mabel went immediately to the left side of the yard. The garden beds, the good hiding spots. Natalia went right toward the back fence, the open grass. There were no eggs along the back fence. There were no eggs on Natalia's side of the yard at all. Natalia searched for 9 minutes. I counted because I watched the whole thing from the back porch, telling myself she just had bad luck. Telling myself it was random. Mabel found the golden egg 4 minutes in the 3rd flower bed from the left. Brenda hugged Mabel with the warmth that fills a room. She said, "Good girl, I knew you'd find it." That was the first time, filed away as coincidence. The second time removed the coincidence excuse. Christmas. Brenda had organized a small variety show, grandchildren performing things. Both girls had prepared. Natalia had practiced a carol for 3 weeks, a version she had rearranged slightly to make her own, which was very Natalia. Brenda had borrowed a microphone from a neighbor. She set the stand at Mabel's height. When Mabel sang, the sound filled the room. When Natalia's turn came, Brenda was adjusting the microphone stand. She said it was having trouble staying at height. By the time it was ready, Natalia had already started. She sang without it. Her voice, which is not small, was smaller than the room. The adults smiled the polite smile of people being kind to a child they can't quite hear. Afterward, Brenda said to no one in particular, "Mabel really does have the stronger voice, doesn't she?" Natalia was standing 5 feet away, putting her music sheet back in her bag. I said nothing. This is the part I own. I said nothing, and Natalia heard what was said, and I watched her put the music sheet away with the particular neatness of a child closing a drawer on something she has decided to be finished with. The second time, excused by me as thoughtlessness. The third time was the one that turned this from a pattern into a system. 4 months before the wedding, at Tony's grandmother Barbara's 92nd birthday gathering, the children had been asked to bring something special. A poem, a drawing, a letter. Natalia had written a poem. It took her 2 weeks. She went through 4 drafts. She showed them to me the night before, spread on the kitchen table because she wanted me to check the rhymes. The morning of the party, Brenda called. She said the schedule had gotten tight. There was only time for 1 presentation. And since Mabel's was already printed and framed and ready, it made more sense to go with hers. She said this with perfect reasonableness. The reasonableness was the part that stayed with me. I said okay. I told Natalia there wasn't time. She nodded. She put the folder in her bag. She presented the poem privately, in a corner of the living room while the adults were getting cake, just Barbara and Natalia and me, and Barbara held Natalia's hands and said it was the most beautiful thing she'd heard in years. That evening, I found Natalia's practice folder on the kitchen table, the 4 drafts inside, placed there and forgotten. I stood with it for a long time. 3 incidents. 3 times the same mechanism. 3 times something positioned and adjusted in advance, so that Mabel was the only one holding the spotlight while Natalia stood somewhere quieter. 3 times I told myself a story about what I was seeing that made it possible for me to do nothing. About 3 weeks after Christmas, on a Saturday afternoon, I found Natalia in the hallway. She had taken the white basket down from the shelf and was packing away her practice materials. The petal inventory, the timing notes, the small notebook. She put them all inside the basket, put the lid on, and carried it back to her closet. She did not know I was watching. The basket wasn't a toy anymore. It was a reminder of a dream she had decided to kill before Brenda could do it for her. I am going to tell you what I had given Brenda over 5 years, because this is not sentiment. It is engineering. I drove her daughter Mabel to soccer practice 26 times over 2 seasons, somewhere between 40 and 50 hours of my time. I organized and paid for Mabel's 7th birthday supplies when Brenda was traveling, $230, never mentioned again. I covered family gathering travel costs across 4 trips over 5 years. Just over $1,000 in gas and accommodation. I had done all of it as family, the way you do things for family when you believe you are building something reciprocal. What I understand now is that Brenda had been counting on this the way you count on a resource that will continue to be available because it always has been. She had arranged her plans accordingly. She had been depending on my goodwill and my silence in the same breath. And all that time, the venue on Bull Street had cameras in every corridor. Tony knew this. And in the weeks before the wedding, Brenda did not know that Tony was the kind of man who, when given a reason to make one phone call, makes it very calmly and very precisely. I had not yet seen him be that man. I was about to. The moment that changed everything about how I understood the previous 5 years came not from finding Natalia in the storage room, but from what Brenda did at 7:40 that evening, in front of every person at that reception. And what happened in those 60 seconds is the part I am still not done processing because I did not know he was going to do it. I did not know it was possible to do it. And I have thought about it almost every day since. Tony was calm through the reception in the way he is calm when he has already made a decision and is simply choosing his moment. He moved through conversations, smiled at the right times, gave no signals. I watched him from across the room and knew he was waiting for something. I did not know what. He made the phone call at 7:40. Brenda was standing near the head table, champagne glass raised, working her way into a toast. She had taken the microphone the way she takes everything, smoothly, with the complete confidence of someone who has already decided she is the right person for the job. She was talking about family, the importance of it, how certain moments belong to those who truly understand what family means. She used the word unbreakable. She was smiling. She was basking in a room that did not yet know what she had done 3 hours earlier. Tony stepped outside for exactly 60 seconds. He called Patricia Tomlinson, who was already in the AV booth managing the wedding slideshow. As Brenda said the words unbreakable family bonds, the music cut. The large projector screens behind her, the ones that had been cycling through photographs of Carolyn and James since the cocktail hour, flickered once and went dark. Then they came back. It was not a slideshow, it was the service corridor. Timestamp 3:17 p.m. Brenda's back first, moving down the hall. Then her face as she turned toward the storage room door, Natalia's hand in hers, Natalia looking up at her, the door opening, Natalia going inside, Brenda's hand on the door. The chair. The entire room went silent. Brenda was still holding the microphone. She turned around. She saw herself on the screen. She saw the corridor. She saw the timestamp. She saw her own hand placing the chair, deliberate and unhurried. The way you do something you have already decided to do and have no reason to rush because no one is watching. Except the camera. The champagne glass slipped. She caught it with her other hand. Barely, the stem rattling against her ring. The color left her face so completely and so fast that the woman standing beside her reached out instinctively, not yet understanding what she was witnessing, just understanding that something was happening to the person next to her. Brenda looked like she had seen her own ghost. Tony walked back into the room as the footage looped. He did not pick up a microphone. He did not raise his voice. He walked to the center of the room and stood where everyone could see him, and he said quietly enough that the room had to go still to hear it. Natalia was in that room for 40 minutes, with the chair wedged under the handle. Nobody moved. Tony's mother put her hand flat on the table in front of her, the way you reach for something solid when the floor has shifted beneath you. Carolyn's new husband had gone completely still. Tony's aunts, who a moment ago had been standing beside Brenda while she gave her toast, stood with their glasses halfway to their mouths, suspended. Brenda lowered the microphone. She set it on the table beside her champagne glass. Both of her hands were shaking visibly now. She tried once. I was just trying to give Mabel her moment. She's always felt like she's in Natalia's shad. She was locked in a room, Tony said, with a chair under the handle, while over 200 people sat in this building and had no idea. The screen behind her looped back to the beginning, Brenda's back, moving down the corridor, Natalia's hand. Brenda's eyes moved from Tony's face to the screen to the 200 people staring at her in a silence so complete you could hear the ice maker running behind the bar. She looked at Tony's mother. She looked at Carolyn. Neither of them looked away first. She set her champagne glass down on the nearest table, both hands, very carefully. The deliberateness of someone performing control because every other system had failed her. She walked out of the reception without her wrap, without her clutch, without saying goodbye to a single person. The doors closed behind her, and the room stayed exactly as she had left it. 200 people, silent, staring at a screen still looping. Patricia Tomlinson stopped the footage 30 seconds after Brenda left. The slideshow came back. Nobody asked her to restart the music for a while. Carolyn found Natalia in the side room Tony had moved her to and sat with her for 10 minutes. What Natalia told me afterward is that Carolyn showed her the main hall from the doorway and said, "Do you want to walk in with me?" Natalia said yes. She carried her basket down the full length of the reception hall with music playing, and she scattered every petal she had brought, all of them on the floor where the reception was happening. She was the only flower girl doing it. She did not scatter them quickly. She scattered them the way she had practiced. One slow step at a time. The basket was empty when she reached the head table. She held it in both hands and looked at it, and then looked at Carolyn and said, "I ran out." Carolyn said, "That's exactly right." The week after the wedding, I stopped driving Mabel to activities. Not announced, not explained. Simply the thing that had been available stopped being available because the goodwill it had been premised on no longer existed. 40-plus hours across 2 seasons gone. The $230 in birthday supplies. The $1,000 in travel support across 5 years, gone. Not redirected in a dramatic gesture, just absorbed back into our household and our life, the way a river rights itself when you stop holding a channel open with your hands. Brenda had held the planning role for the family's summer reunion for 3 years. The person who plans the gathering shapes it, who gets the good room, whose children's events make the schedule, who has advance information and who doesn't. Tony's mother removed the role from her the week after the wedding, quietly, without a family conversation. The reunion was planned by someone else. Brenda was invited as a guest with no organizational access and no advance information. The social architecture she had been building and leveraging for 3 years was handed to someone who had not locked a child in a storage room. Patricia Tomlinson's written account, which she sent Tony voluntarily the morning after, because she needed to put what she had witnessed somewhere outside herself, went to Carolyn, to James, to Tony's parents. Brenda's attempt to describe the storage room as a scheduling misunderstanding found no purchase in a family that had watched the timestamp on a projector screen with 200 people standing in front of it. Tony has not spoken to his sister since. His mother has spoken to her once, briefly. Tony summarized it in 3 words. She still justifies. Brenda sent a card that said she was sorry for the confusion. Neither Tony nor I responded. A few weeks after the wedding, on a Sunday morning, I found Natalia in the hallway. She had gotten the basket down from the shelf and gone outside and picked flowers from the garden. Small things, whatever was blooming, and filled it. She was practicing the walk. Music from her tablet, orchestral, the same kind as before. One slow step, both hands on the handle, eyes forward. She did not know I was watching. She got to the end of the hallway and turned around. "Do it again?" she asked the empty hallway. Not me, not anyone. She just wanted to do it again. I said yes from the doorway, and she looked up surprised, and then she grinned, and she went back to the start. She walked it again. And then again, not for anyone watching, just because she had decided something was worth doing and she intended to do it correctly. The petals were falling before the walk even started. Garden flowers not designed for scattering, but she walked anyway, committed. The way she has always been committed to the things she decides matter. Brenda has not asked to see Natalia, but she will. So here's the question I am actually asking you, the one I need you to debate in the comments because I cannot resolve it alone. Is a relationship with a cousin worth the risk of a child's emotional safety? Or am I just as guilty as Brenda if I let her back in and something happens again? And I had already seen what she was capable of? The easy answer is never. The human answer is harder. I have watched Natalia ask me, just once, whether Mabel is still her cousin. I said yes, she said okay, and went back to what she was doing. That okay keeps me up at night. because I don't know yet whether it is the resilience of a child who has moved through something and come out intact, or the accommodation of a child who has learned to say okay to things that should not require her, okay? I don't want Natalia to be the child who absorbs and adjusts. I want her to be the one who empties the basket and then asks to do it again. Tell me what you would do. If this story meant something to you, if you have ever watched a child practice something with her whole heart and wondered who in your family was quietly moving the eggs to the other side of the yard. Subscribe, like this, share it with someone who needed to hear it today, and tell me in the comments, would you let Brenda back in for the sake of the cousins, or does protecting Natalia come first?